Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we're going to be taking a little look back at when Blaziken ruled the Pokemon trading card game. And maybe that's a slight exaggeration, but make no mistake about it. There was a time between Supreme Victors being released and Heart Gold Soul Silver being released, where Blaziken was one of the very, very, very best decks in the Pokemon TCG. It was, frankly, great. Now, it was all undone when Garchomp came along, because you see, Garchomp didn't have double colorless energy. So what would happen was that Garchomp, even with energy gain, more on that in a moment, it would take 2 energy to use Garchomp's attack. And that was too much, because you'd have to discard both those energy. So you could use Dragon Rush, but you could use it every other turn. It was frankly not consistent enough. Like I say, Heart Gold Soul Silver came out, double colorless energy, Blaziken went away, etc. But between Supreme Victors and Heart Gold Soul Silver, Blaziken was awesome, and I'm probably going to call it Infernape at some point during the video if I haven't already. If I do, my apologies. Blaziken FB then is an SP Pokemon, so it's a basic, it's a stage 2, but it's a basic. And 1 fire energy switched to defending Pokemon when one of your opponents benched. The new defending Pokemon is now burned. It's fine. It's fine. It's not good, but it's fine. Nice early game attack. And bearing in mind, back then we had stuff like Claydol, which would sit on the bench with a not insignificant retreat cost, and so you could drag that up and buy yourself a bit of time if needed to. Vapor Kick was weirdly specific. 60 damage if your opponent had any water Pokemon in play, 30 damage if not. Now it is for 2 energy, but we did have energy gain back then, which could be attached to an SP Pokemon like Blaziken, and reduce the attack cost down to just 1 fire energy. Well, that was alright. It reduced it by 1 colorless. It was fine. Wasn't amazing. However, Blaziken FB level X, yes. Now, the Pokebody, think old ability, passive. Any damage done by attacks to a burned Pokemon is increased by 40, but this could only work once. You couldn't get 2 Blaziken FB level X and roll. Incidentally, as a side note here, because this was a level X, Blaziken FB and Blaziken FB level X essentially had the same name. So you had to decide on either a 2-2 or a 3-1 split here, which was a little bit of a pain. I suppose technically you could have gone for a 1-3 split, but that would have been really silly. So don't. There we go. Don't. So this was fine. Now, if you use Blaziken FB's attack, this became really good. Generally, it wasn't always the case. But even if you didn't, 80 damage for a fire energy because of energy gain, really good. And yeah, this was a very glass cannon thing. But this was in the day before we had 2 prize, or between having 2 prize Pokemon. The old EX era had gone away, the new EX era had not yet started, so it didn't really matter. Yeah, this would not last very long. You essentially had 70 HP, but you're taking a prize every turn. So even though games will often come down to the wire, you take a prize, they take a prize, you take a prize, they take a prize, as long as you're starting this trade, it's fine. It's not as good as Garchomp doing 80 damage anywhere, and then not increasing damage to itself. But this, make no mistake about it, strong attack. Now, this was paired with Luxray. Luxray has always been amazing. Luxray GL, that is. And it's not really for the GL. It's fine, but it's never been particularly great. But the level X is phenomenal. It's got free retreat, and when it's in the active, and you level X it, you get to drag a Pokemon active. Like Guzma does, but without the switching. It's crazy good. Now, side note here, for anyone that wasn't playing back then, level Xing was kind of like evolving, but it wasn't evolving. You just put the card on top. You could use any attacks of the previous Pokemon, so I suppose really it's like break Pokemon. And you could only do it when it was in the active. That was crucial. But you had free retreat, so you evolve up, bring something active, retreat. To be fair, doing 60 damage for what was essentially a lightning energy with an energy gain, still really quite nice. And they were the Pokemon. Now there were plenty of others we could use, we'll get to them in a moment, but largely they were the ones you would use. Now, back then, you didn't always have ×2 weakness. Blaziken FB had ×2 weakness. Most of the level X's did, but not all of them did. So that's where Lucario GL came in, especially for stuff like Gyarados, which you would need Luxray. Gyarados didn't have a ×2 weakness. This became super, super important. And there are a bunch of other SP Pokemon we can talk about in a moment. But the other super crucial one here, and it was super crucial, Uxie level X. Now, to be fair, back then, Uxie was kind of over-the-top phenomenal. Play it to your bench, draw till you got 7 cards, yes please. But then when you get it in the active and level X it, you get a ridiculous poker power. Once during your turn, and when you went back to the bench, you can still use this every turn. Look at the top 2 cards of your deck, 1 in your hand, 1 to the bottom of your deck. And it was great for the poker power, but it was also a really important Machamp counter, though you would need Lucario. And this is a great time for me to point out Crobat G. Because Crobat G did really good damage. You drop it down, it did 10 damage. Didn't have to use it, and it didn't come out till Platinum. But when it was out, really, really good for getting that extra damage down, doing a little bit of extra damage. Now, we also saw Azalf here. Azalf is really important because you got to grab a Pokemon out of your prize cards. Now, like I said, you're generally playing a 2-2 or a 3-1 line of Blaziken. That makes Azalf absolutely crucial. And then we also had some unknown. So, I already told you about Machamp being a potential issue. Machamp for a single energy got an instant KO on any basic Pokemon. Your entire deck is basic Pokemon. And like I say, because level Xing isn't evolving, you're still a basic Pokemon. So, Unknown G, it prevented effects of attacks other than damage. It did a bunch of good stuff, but it stopped Machamp. And pretty much every deck back then played Unknown Q. It reduced your retreat cost by 1. You didn't have to, but most of the time you put this on Uxie level X. Level X it when it's in the active, attach Unknown Q, retreat to the bench, you're golden. You could use it for others, but that was the best use for it. Now there were other Pokemon you could play. Bronzong G was popular in SP decks because you could move your energy around. Toxicroak G, which was a promo given away with a book, which was expensive after a little while, was quite good just as a revenge Pokemon and as a Luxray counter. But what was really important here was your Blaziken, your Uxie, your Azalf, your Luxray, your Lucario. They were the ones that were really, really big here. And because it was an SP deck, now I made a video about SP decks, I'll link it in the description, but a very quick reminder of the kind of stuff that SP decks had. Cyrus's Conspiracy, search for a supporter, basic energy card, and a Team Galactic's trainer. And generally we would do what you call Cyrus chaining, where you use one Cyrus to search for another, and so you go. Basic energy is kind of self-explanatory, but in terms of the tools you had Energy Gain, which we've talked about, Poker Turn, which just picked up a Pokemon SP, think of it as Super Scoop Up, but you don't need to bother flipping a coin, just for SP Pokemon. And that was really good if you were damaged and not KO'd. And then Power Spray. If you had 3 SP Pokemon or more in play, you could turn off your opponent's ability. They'd go, I'm going to bench Uxie, and you'd go, brilliant, but I'm going to Power Spray, you don't get the ability. Uxie is still benched, but you don't get to use Setup, which is nuts good. Yeah, that was a big thing back then. We also had SP Radar, which let you swap a Pokemon in your hand for a Pokemon SP in your deck. Except it didn't actually have to be a Pokemon, it was any card in your hand. So think Pokemon Communication, but instead of having to have a Pokemon you didn't want in your hand, you had to have a card. Yeah, pretty gosh darn good. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention Aaron's Collection. This was really just your recovery, if I'm honest with you. You get your Pokemon SP and basic energy back, it was really good. Really good. And then, of course, back then we had Luxury Ball. Let you search for any Pokemon. It was really quite nice. Now, the one last card I do want to mention here is Expert Belt. Now, Expert Belt was a weird one because Expert Belt meant that your attacks did an extra 20 damage to the active and it gave you 20 more HP. Surely there's a downside, you give up 2 prizes. And on the one hand, this could be crucial, and on the other hand, remember that Blaziken's a little bit of a glass cannon. You weren't always willing to give up those 2 prizes, but again, this is up to you to decide, ladies and gentlemen. Play it if you want. Don't play it if you don't want. In terms of energy, I need to mention we had SP energy. It was literally rainbow energy for SP Pokemon, but you didn't take a damage counter. Yeah, SP decks were a little bit nuts. And then Cool Energy was really good in the early game just to get your basics out. It ended your turn while searching for a couple of basics. If you want an example deck list, here's one taken from Jason Glazinski's rather excellent Pokemon blog. But you do need to be careful about the format in which you play this deck. Pre-Heart Gold Soul Silver, this deck was a monster and one of the very, very best decks in the format. Arguably the best deck. Post-Heart Gold Soul Silver, it almost entirely disappeared. That isn't to say that nobody ever played it. It is to say that it was significantly less popular, significantly less successful, and almost entirely replaced, certainly in terms of successfulness, is that a word? It is now, by Garchomp. But when it was good, ladies and gentlemen, it was very, very good. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. There was a time when Infernape was, to use a phrase that I like, nuts good. So, tell me your memories, ladies and gentlemen. Tell me what you thought about this deck. Tell me if you played it. Go nuts in the comment section. But please do remember the rule. Be nice, would ya? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where we talk about games that don't have Pokemon in. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.